I will open the record in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation filed by Paul Gabrinetti.
Yes.
Gabrinetti. This bears Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2018-101167, agency number 2002-014-000-723. Today's date is November 28th, 2018. My name is Deborah Nye Perkins, and I am an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, sitting today with a quorum of the Board of Behavioral Sciences to consider this petition. May I take appearance of counsel, starting with the agency, please?
Good morning. Molly Selway, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California, pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 2760.1 and Government Code Section 11522. Thank you.
Selway.
My name is Steve Frankel, and I'm here representing Dr. Gabrinetti.
Thank you, Mr. Frankel. Before we get started, I'm going to mark documents. So we have a notebook in front of us here, and I'm going to mark them as we go. Under tab 1 is the petition for early termination of probation. I'm going to mark that in its attachments. I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 1. Under tab 2 is a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order along with the accusation. I'll mark as Exhibit 2. Under tab 3 is a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order and accusation, which is ordered in 2013. I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 3. Under tab 4 is a hearing notice. I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 4. And under tab 5 is the license registration history. I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 5. Ms. Selway, do you have any additional documents to mark?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Frankel, do you have any additional documents to mark?
No, I don't, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Just 1 second. All right, Ms. Selway, would you like to provide a summary statement?
Your Honor, I'd like to admit the
Like to admit those documents?
yes, the exhibits into evidence.
Mr. Frankel, do you have any objections to the admission of any of those documents?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, exhibits 1 through 5 are admitted. And there's nothing I have to be concerned about with regard to confidentiality purposes?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, so exhibits 1 through 5 are admitted. Ms. Selway?
Thank you. We are here today on a petition for early termination of probation. Petitioner was issued licensed marriage and family therapist number 8301 on or about September 27th, 1976. Said license was in full force and effect at all times. The basis for the discipline. The original basis for the discipline in this matter was based on discipline of an accusation filed by the Board of Psychology, which alleged gross negligence, repeated acts of negligence, and violations of rules of professional conduct for an inappropriate relationship with the patient, while petitioner was acting as a psychologist. The accusation filed by this board was based solely upon discipline by the other board. Petitioner entered into a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order effective June 17, 2015. Petitioner was placed on 4 years probation with optional and standard terms and conditions. Petitioner is fully compliant with the probation, with the exception of one citation issued by the Board of Psychology. The citation was based upon petitioner's failure to pay cost recovery within the first year of probation. The costs were more than $7,000. In response to the citation, respondent satisfied all owed costs and remains fully compliant with both probations. Petitioner's probation with the Board of Psychology will be completed on December 29th, 2019. Thank you. At this time, this petitioner's burden to demonstrate that he is rehabilitated and safe to practice and that his probation should be terminated early. Therefore, we have nothing further at this time, but reserve the right to cross-examine petitioner if he decides not to testify.
Thank you, Ms. Selway. Mr. Frankel, would you like to provide an opening statement?
Yes, I would. I'm glad to be here representing Dr. Gabrinetti. And the most important thing I can tell you to begin with is that Dr. Gabrinetti is not one of my clients who I suspect having dementia as a problem. I knew you'd get there. What is remarkable about Dr. Gabrinetti's reaction to what happened to him some years ago is the forthrightness and openness and capacity to manage the shame that went with the consequences for what he did. I'm going to let him talk to you now.
Okay, hold on a second. I need to place him under oath first.
Oh.
All right, so let me place you under oath. Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm under the penalty of perjury to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this hearing today?
Yes.
Okay, and I have this information, but I'm going to ask you to state and spell your full
course.
name for me, please.
Paul, P-A-U-L. Do you want my middle name as well?
Sure.
Anthony, A-N-T-H-O-N-Y. Last name is Gabrinetti, G-A-B-R-I-N-E-T-T-I.
And your current age, sir?
67.
Okay. Are you currently employed
Yeah, I'm in private practice, yes.
in private practice?
Yes.
What do you do?
Individual and couples and occasionally child therapy
How long have you done that?
since 1976.
And what would you like to tell me today about why you're here?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's very good to be here and actually put real human beings with the name the board. You know, to realize that there are real people here who are, you know, acting on behalf of the public, for which you know, I'm proud to serve. I'm going to read just a little bit, but I want to. I can't say enough about how deeply this has affected me, this whole process, and what it's led to and what I've actually done with this. My meeting with my former client outside of the therapeutic ethical boundaries were something that you know, I had a great deal of embarrassment and shame about initially. However, I have to say that as a result of confronting this, as a result of the work that went into this individual psychotherapy, as well as what I've also done in terms of the community, has been a very, very important thing in shifting my life. In addition, to the education, it also stimulated my work and exploration and writing having to do with ethics and morals. I ended up co-authoring a book with a colleague during this time, which had I think its impetus very much in this whole process. The therapeutic container is there to protect the integrity of both the therapist as well, and most importantly, the patient. And to leave that boundary, it does not allow for the dynamics of the psychotherapeutic process to be managed under any circumstances. And that was something that forced me to look back and re-examine, you know, everything that I've ever learned, as well as to relearn and to go to a deeper level with that. In the past 4 years, I've taken the opportunity to further educate myself about ethical practice and psychotherapy, to study ethics in general, and to continue to add to my knowledge and experiential base as a therapist. Mostly, I've really sought to discuss with colleagues and to reach out to colleagues. I'm part of an analytic institute, and during that time, I've taken advantage of that relationship. By reaching out to colleagues, by discussing this process, and also I took the opportunity to present my case to my analytic institute, to anyone who was interested in coming to see, and which was, you know, a major hurdle, getting over that level of, well, certainly embarrassment, but also shame. But it was imperative to do that, to be able to share my story and to be able to share my own process in that. And I found that to be incredibly helpful, certainly to me, and from the feedback I got was certainly helpful to my colleagues. As part of my own self-care, reaching out to other colleagues and to take a good deal more advantage of that is something that I think has been very, very important to me, that I've had to re-examine over these last 4 to 5 years. And I can certainly say as a result of that, I find that well, my personal life, my practice, as well as the collegiality that has come out of that has been enormously rewarding and very, very helpful in the process of my working through this whole process. My individual psychotherapy was enormously important in that, which I still continue to participate in. And from which I found some very, very deep and very important processes that also led to my boundary violation. So I would say certainly for that reason, if nothing else, I mean that is the bedrock of my being able to continue to move forward as a clinician. That kind of knowledge and that deeper insight as to what my vulnerability was to that was extraordinarily important to me. So I'll leave it with that for now.
Okay. Cross-examination.
Thank you. I read your response to the petition, and you really focused on the benefits of going to your current your therapist.
Yes.
If your petition was granted, would you continue on that
Oh,
path?
yes.
And how often?
Hold on, I didn't hear the answer.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
And how long have you been seeing this therapist?
I think probably between 4 and 5 years at this point.
And how often do you see this person?
Weekly.
Weekly? Just once a week?
Yes.
And would you continue the same path of once a week?
Probably. I mean, at some point may cut back to every other week, but I don't see termination in the future at this point.
Thank you. Your probation, why do you want to seek the termination of probation today? You don't really have that much longer to go on your probation
Right.
period. What about it? Why today?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. One is that I'm also concurrently applied to the Board of Psychology to terminate that probation, of which I applied a number of months ago and still don't have a date on. So
Okay, there's no date.
it's going to be sometime, from what I've been told, in February or March, perhaps. And so I wanted to follow up here because in having that probation terminated, I wanted to be able to have this license cleared as well. And certainly this would reduce some of the financial burden as well.
Other than the financial burden, is there anything about probation that you are having a hard time with?
Not in particular. I mean, I look forward to going out to teach and to being able to do that, which at the moment, with the BBS limitations, I can't teach any continuing education.
What subjects would you teach?
Well, probably mostly at this point, I would be teaching in analytic psychology.
You mentioned the inappropriate boundaries. Can you elaborate on what that inappropriate boundaries, or what those inappropriate boundaries were? And
Well, sure. I mean, specifically, it's like I saw a client outside of therapy. Okay, after therapy terminated, I went with a request to meet with this person outside the coffee shops, different things like that. So someone who was also a professional who had just been starting out. And in my misguided perception, I thought that perhaps I could be of help, which is what was asked for. But I certainly know at this point, by far, that that kind of help is no help at all, particularly given that it goes outside the containment. And essentially, even if therapy is terminated, the transference process still goes on.
can you elaborate more on the type of help you're trying to provide?
Well, yeah, I mean, part of it was just, her starting a practice and, the kinds of things that that person might do to help, develop themselves professionally.
I believe when I looked at your petition last night, and so
Yeah.
I don't recall it word for word,
Sure,
but
sure.
you have pretty extensive answers on everything. So
Mhm.
I'm probably not going to dig too deeply here,
Sure.
but just briefly explain to me what you've learned through this whole process and how it would never happen again.
Okay. Well, I'll divide it in kind of two categories that are obviously integral. But on the one hand, I mean, in the outside world, I mean, to be able to have an ongoing review of myself and my practice, my own sense of organizational processes, my own sense of professional commitments, continuing education, and so on, to continuously be reevaluating, where I am personally, professionally, what I want to continue to do, where I feel like I'm no longer, wanting to be part of, and so on. And then, again, like I said in my statement, it's like really reaching out to other professionals and really having an ongoing sense of community to be able to reach out to discuss. I mean, for years, people came to me to do that, and for a number of years there, I was probably much more isolated than I needed to be, and so. I mean, at this point, I have a much more vigorous group of people that I reach out to and spend time collegially discuss issues and cases and so on with. On the
I'm sorry, just real quick on the vigorous group of people. Can you just go in a little more detail who these people are? Are they
sure.
Are they coworkers? Are they friends? Are they family?
Well, I mean, professionally speaking, it's through my analytic institute. It's like I have. Gosh, there's got to be close to 100 colleagues there, of which, I have probably, I would say, 20 to 25 that I feel fairly close to and participate with. Now, at an inner level, which to me is the more important issue here, it's like, as a result of my own analytic work and inner experience, is that I was able to discover and come across what the triggers were for me on an internal level. And that had to do with the unique qualities of this particular person. And what it triggered was a certain quality of my mother, as well as a certain quality of my older half-brother, who was kind of a challenging, bullying figure, and a mother who was in need of a lot of support and help. Someone who was very bright but never developed it. Okay. And so, I mean, the combination of those two things and the fact that they were operating not consciously in me were motivations for my projecting that into this person.
Prior to the discipline by the Board of Psychology and our discipline, or this board's discipline, sorry, did you go to psychotherapy at all or any type of therapy?
Yes.
You did, okay.
A lot, yeah.
Okay, so
over the years, yes.
So this isn't the first time you've been in therapy?
Not at all, no. I have probably cumulative total close to 20 years of psychotherapy.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, I'll do that for board members.
Thank you.
I'll start to the right. Do you want to question? If you want to wait until after someone else asks, we have someone ready right now. Okay.
Hi, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Christine Whitlisbach, public member. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little more on the nature of the relationship with the patient. And specifically, I'm looking at the accusation. I'm looking for a date. I don't have it. The accusation.
The Board of Pharmacy, or I'm sorry, Board of Psychology, or the behavioral science?
Good question. Board of Psychology.
Which is sorry for everyone, Exhibit 3. Right.
Okay.
If you wanna
Page
look, it's
3.
also Exhibit 3 in the papers I gave you. She's looking at
Page 3 of the accusation itself.
Yes.
the accusation is the second half of the document. And it's
Okay. Under the first cause for discipline, number 8.
Okay, I'm trying to get with you here. Okay,
Okay.
wait a minute. That's not it either. What page, please?
3.
Okay, 1, 2.
They're numbered.
It's page 3 of the actual accusation under Exhibit 3, which is behind the stipulation and decision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it should be in the next document. So I'll just show you. There you go. This one.
Okay, thank you.
Got it? Okay.
Yes.
So under the first cause for discipline, number 8, I'm looking at that. And it says that MT, which is the patient, claims that during this time period, respondent would often hold her hand in session, hugged her, told her that she was special compared to other patients, and that he felt intensely about her in and out of session. So that's a little bit different than what you presented earlier, which was talking about helping her with her setting up her practice or some professional issues. So I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Well, this is one of those moments of disputing some of the characterization of that, I guess.
Yes. You have to tell the story that you know and that you experience.
Okay. I have to say that I dispute that the characterization. What I in fact did do that is accurate in here, is that one time when she was crying, very, very profoundly, I did reach out and hold her hand. I did do that, in fact.
Okay.
But to say that I hugged her, told her that she was a very special person, and all of that, that is, one, I did not do that, and 2, it's like that is not anything that I do with clients. My God, that would be, talking about eroticizing and stimulating something, within the transference. It's like that's not my behavior.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, good morning,
Good morning.
and thank you for coming. So based on that answer, I'm wondering, in your opinion, should you have been sanctioned and put on probation for any reason? And if so, could you
Oh yes.
tell us for
Oh,
what,
absolutely.
Tell us what that
Yes. Because I crossed the boundary. I met with somebody outside the containment of psychotherapy.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, I did that.
Okay. I noticed here, and I'm going to refer to number 11 on your application for early termination,
Okay.
that your answer to number 11 was extremely brief.
Okay.
And so I know you've spoken to it somewhat. Could you expound that section? Because to me that's a little, there's not much information there. It just sounds sort of under-specific.
Yeah. Okay, I'll probably be a little redundant from what I've said before. At the end of psychotherapy, this person had requested to meet on occasion, and I went with that request. And again, that was the violation, of crossing that boundary, which absolutely is inappropriate. And also, again, it's very ruinous to the work that is done in psychotherapy, because there is no longer a container, there's no longer the proper vessel to be able to sort through the issues that come up. Certainly it was technically and very much an ethical breach, but even deeper than it just being a breaking of a rule. It's messing with the entire container that allows us to do the work. And that to me is the tragedy. That to me is the enormous loss here.
And so, what is the specific tragedy with this situation as you reflect on what happened that has occurred?
Well, I think what it did is it certainly I exacerbated her anxiety and confusion ultimately, I think, and did not allow her to have a clear sense of boundary and completion in the work. In fact, it broke that open. And so then, I'm sure it caused her to question anything that went on in the work. And so that to me is tragic. I mean, that time is lost and that therapeutic benefit is lost.
Anything else?
Well, yeah, I mean, the suffering, the enormous suffering, that I'm sure she felt in that process. I mean, I know she felt in that process. I mean, I have deep regret and grief over that. And then to know that I caused some of that, absolutely.
Okay. You mentioned in your testimony that the nature of your meetings were to have conversations to start a private practice and help her develop professionally. Whose idea was it for you to do that?
She
suggested
asked
that?
me.
Okay.
She asked me.
Okay. So then my next question would be, as a psychologist who's practiced for over 40 years, which is actually in your paperwork,
Yeah.
It sounds like my impression is that you knew that was a boundary violation. But I'm wondering, sort of in your work with your therapist, what have you learned about what kept you from setting a limit with her and actually processing that clinically in the container of the relationship?
Because that is the important inner work that came in that. Because I think what showed up unconsciously in my projection on and into her was what I was describing to the Attorney General's representative here, which is that I experienced in her this level of need in terms of she came from a very underprivileged background, a very bright person, very, very capable person. And that was a great blank screen for who my mother was. Okay, and so that was one trigger. And then the second trigger is that she was also, I suppose you could say, in her attitude, a bit bullying, challenging sometimes, and that was exactly what I experienced with an older half-brother. And, there was a long history there with him of really working to, I suppose, gain his approval and to prove to him that I was as much of a competent man as he was, in spite of the fact we were extremely different people. But both of those motivations were in there, and I'm sure driving this choice to step outside that boundary.
Would it be fair to say, looking back, that you did not have a level of sort of accountability in your life that allowed you to sort of bounce those sort of countertransference feelings off of another professional?
Absolutely.
Who could give you clarity?
Absolutely.
So what have you done to address that?
Well, as I've said, I mean, one of the things that I've really done is I've reached out and taken advantage of my analytic community that I'm a part of. Sure. Developing, much closer relationships to many people and also, coming forward with this and opening that level of discourse with people such that, that they are there to be able to bounce these kinds of thoughts, ideas, feelings, should everything ever come up again, off of.
Are there other people that currently are in your support system other than this broad? Because you mentioned that there was like over 100 people.
Well, yeah, I mean, but realistically, I mean, there's probably 20 to 25 people that I'm fairly close to. That I personally make a couple times a year. I personally make a point to actually write down the names, make the lunch, dinner things, and reach out to them. I'm not the sort of person that cares about, well, they didn't call me. It's like I reach out and call them and go to see and spend time with them. Sure. And some of it is social, but probably easily half of it is clinical as well. And there's the avenue by which to have those kinds of discussions.
Sure. Is there anyone else other than that community?
yeah, I mean, I have other professionals outside of the analytic community that
Sure.
I know and reach out to as well. I mean, who also know about this. Some of them, the letters are there. I mean, like Dr. Broderick up in Santa Barbara.
Sure. Is there anyone else other than these professionals? So I will give you the caveat that a lot of professionals and colleagues are potential opportunities for you to share. I'm wondering, are there other people other than colleagues who may see you with a level of esteem because of your 40 years in the field, because you're published? There is a potential for there being a conflict of interest when you meet with someone. I mean, I'm just guessing because you have written, you teach, that people you may ask them to get together to discuss something, but they may have another agenda because you have tremendous, maybe, esteem in their eyes. And so I'm wondering, is there someone who doesn't,
Oh, I mean,
that's
okay,
not a colleague?
oh,
that's
absolutely,
not,
absolutely. Oh,
someone
yes.
in your teaching plenary that you meet
Oh,
with?
no. I mean, if you're asking about just everyday social friends, I mean, is that the
Well, I'd like for you to just answer the question.
sure?
So who else other than the people that you've described would you take that sort of feeling to if it arose again with another client? Where would you take that?
In other words, well, first of all, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking that kind of conflict to anyone to discuss it with that's not a professional.
Sure.
Okay, I mean, so that, that, I guess that's where I got a little confused with your question. I wouldn't go to anyone who wasn't a professional to discuss those kinds of things with. And also, too, I mean, just in terms of just general interactions, I mean, I have a good many friends outside of, my professional community and so on.
Sure. Okay. I'm wondering, and maybe you could help me better understand why maybe your therapist wouldn't be someone that you'd take that to, who could help you unpack what's going on. I guess I'm just a little interested
Well, I
to know
mean,
what
that
you say
I do. I mean, I suppose I took that for granted because I do that every week. I mean, that's definitely part of it.
Okay.
For
If you
sure.
could do me a favor, if you could maybe fully answer the questions, so that way I and the board know that when you're taking things for granted, that you're demonstrating a level of insight and understanding of sort of how you've internalized your rehabilitation, so that this may not
Sure.
reduce the likelihood of this happening.
Sure. Look, if there's any thought, idea, temptation to step outside of any of those boundaries, certainly. I mean, I would be probably the first person I would be discussing it with would be my therapist, because again, I have very frequent contact with him. I trust him. We have a very intimate and good working relationship. He would be the first person I would talk to, actually.
Thank you. So I was wondering, and I appreciate your patience with these questions.
Sure.
Could you help me and the board understand what you learned about why you went to see a psychiatrist and 2 other therapists to sort of work through your relationship if all you were trying to do was start a practice and help her develop professionally? Like, what other things, why did you do it, and what other things were potentially being worked on?
Can you restate the question? I'm not.
So in your documentation,
Yeah.
it says that you met with a Richard Baker in June 2010.
Oh, yeah.
And then you met with a subsequent
right.
therapist in January 2011, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
a subsequent therapist in March to work on the
Yeah.
relationship. And I'm wondering what
Yeah.
you've learned about why you participated in that.
Well, I mean, part of it was trying to process, try to process what was left undone. Okay, as a result of having left, the container of psychotherapy, meeting with her outside, and there was an attempt to meet with those 3 people to try and sort that through and resolve it, which was not successful. In other words, it was an attempt to try.
I got your answer. I'm just trying to formulate.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just trying to formulate. Maybe this would be my last question.
Sure.
Number 13. In question 13, I know one of the things that's missing that I haven't seen, and maybe I may have missed it, is that I hear when you talk about the impact of what's happening, it talks a lot about how it's impacted you professionally, personally, but I don't really hear any significant expounding on the impact and the damage that this has had to a client. You've spoken a little bit to that here, and I'm wondering why that wasn't annotated here.
Well, it wasn't in the question, but I mean, certainly, again, a great deal of the embarrassment and the shame that's in that is knowing that as a result of my negligence, that she suffered, it caused her to suffer greatly. And that certainly as I'm working, and continuing to work on my own ethical process, to be able to fully it's with the motivation that it's like I never want to have that happen ever again, and want to keep as much consciousness about that as possible. Yeah.
Okay. And I would, and just making a statement, I would disagree. I think the question asked, what have you done to ensure that you're safe to practice?
Mm-hmm.
And as a board, one of the things that gives us confidence that a probationer is safe to practice is that they have developed a significant amount of remorse and insight
Mm-hmm.
into what they brought to the table
Mm-hmm.
that has impacted and caused them to make decisions that they made or engage in certain behaviors. And so that's why I asked that question. So I think it's very relevant because that helps the board clearly see where you are as a repentant, remorseful probationer. So,
Sure.
so thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Were you finished?
I am. I
Oh,
did
okay.
say I was finished.
I'm just a public member, so
Sure.
there. I don't have the expertise that the licensees have, so perhaps I'm missing
Sure.
something because I'm just a little confused.
Sure.
And I hope you don't find this inappropriate. So I'm just going to ask the question.
Sure.
Was there any romantic involvement with you and this individual, either from your end or from her back to you?
There was no romantic involvement on my part at all. I think she perhaps wanted that,
Okay, all right.
but there was none.
And were you aware of that?
Yes, I spoke to it several times.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. That
You're
clears
very
that up.
welcome. Yeah, thank you for asking the question. I really would like that to be clear.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm just gonna, because I share the same
Sure.
question. And I do appreciate you being patient with us as
Oh,
we try
sure,
to understand
absolutely.
this. But I think part of our confusion is going back again to the original accusation by the
Mhm.
Board of Psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And in describing those sessions,
Mm-hmm.
it very clearly says, respondent admitted that he held hands with MT and had acted on his feelings of attraction towards MT. So I think that's why we're still
I see.
continuing to push on this, is that it's that seems to be a contradiction to what you're presenting today. And I think we just are
Sure.
confused by that.
I appreciate your wanting to get clarification. I mean, look, I certainly want to make clear that from my side, it's like I made it clear to her a number of times, and I did not act on the feelings of attraction. I did, in fact, as I stated earlier, I did reach out to her, in a session and hold her hand. But that was one time, okay, and it was under some pretty heavy-duty duress. And certainly, look, I got to say that in having played these things back through my head no less than 1,000 times over the past several years, it's like, I mean, this has really forced me to reflect on any kind of contact that might convey anything other than a more neutral stance on my part, and all the way down to a handshake, for God's sakes. I mean, I've really had to look at all of that as to what someone could possibly make of my gesture that is not intended. That's really important to me. And that's certainly something that I've contemplated a great deal. But, I mean, to answer your question directly, it's like I did not act on any romantic feelings, nor did I have them, I guess, is even the more salient piece here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I would like to go back to the Board of Psychology accusation. And in one of the items, first cause for discipline number 9 says they even attended therapy sessions together. So
Yes.
is that correct?
That is
True
correct.
statement?
That is correct.
Okay, could you elaborate on that? Why you would
Sure.
do that?
Sure. I mean, okay. One of the results as of having gone outside the therapeutic container is that there were unresolved issues that came up in terms of her feeling my sincerity, in terms of my concerns about her, and I'm trying to think of all the specifics. It's been quite a while now, but the idea was to attempt to address basically her unresolved transference issues to me, and to try and sort them through and resolve them, given that she and I were not able to do that any longer outside the therapeutic container. So we sought out people to try and sort that through and process that with. I mean, I thought that would be the most responsible thing to attempt to do, and unfortunately, those were unsuccessful.
Then going back to your application for early termination of probation,
Yes.
In item number 13, and you stated that I met with a former client, so on and so forth, and
Yes.
that's the only thing you said about the relationship with this former client. I wonder why it's so brief. Apparently your relationship is more than that if you go to sessions together. Why in the application you just say in one phrase, in one sentence, I met with the former client? That was the only thing you did.
Okay, well, what I was referring to there specifically was, what, in other words, what the boundary violation was. In other words, what was the thing that that basically was unethical. Okay, you're right. I did not elaborate on the other pieces of it. That's true.
But don't you think you probably would have to tell a better story, since you're not having any problem telling the whole story to your colleagues, and you're applying for early termination? Don't you think you should tell a better story?
Well, obviously, I could have told a better story in terms of my written part.
I just wonder why you did not tell a better story. I guess that's basically my
Okay.
question.
My understanding is in coming here that the basic part of the process was to discuss my rehabilitation and not go back to rehash the case. That was one of the things I was told. Okay, so that's why I didn't put more of that in there. I mean, had I known that's what this would be about, I certainly would have taken the opportunity to do that, as I've spoken about it this morning.
Well, I'm not a trained psychologist, but common sense would tell me in order to move forward, you have to address what happened before. So I'm quite surprised that you, as a practice psychologist, in an application like that, didn't want to go into that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions on this?
I'm sorry. The question is, so the question is, you think it would not be included in the application? That's not part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder why you think that.
Because that's what I was told. That's what I was told.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Any questions on this?
So, what about your supervised practice? So, can you tell a little bit, about what you work on, what's the focus, and what the difference between your psychotherapy, versus the supervised practice? I mean, the kind of like this. You were required by BBS to have the supervised practice.
Yes, absolutely.
So what I'm checking and see, or maybe to elicit more information from you,
Sure.
is that the kind of the focus that you have been putting forth on these two different requirements, and what do you work on, and your rehabilitation.
Sure. I mean, the supervised practice has actually been really a gift to be able to present on a weekly, ongoing basis, the nature of my cases, to be able to monitor them, to be able to monitor, if there's any countertransference on my part in particular, that might be coming up towards any particular individual, particularly countertransference that would be germane to this case that we're talking about presently. So that's certainly one of the main objectives here, is to be able to monitor my own countertransference feelings or thoughts or anything that might be coming up along that line. So that's certainly first and foremost. Otherwise, I mean, it's a general view of cases and so on is done commonly.
So now, since you're in private practice,
Yes.
and so do you plan to continue supervised practice down the road, or what will be the form of the mechanism to be in place to help you make sure that you're not going to your practice is not being influenced by a countertransfer?
Oh, sure. I mean,
And if
it
you-
was certainly my own therapy. I mean, it'd be first and foremost to be a place to discuss that on a regular basis, in addition to what I've already said in terms of, having other colleagues that I meet with on a regular basis and would feel free to be able to discuss those kinds of issues coming up with. You're welcome.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
I was just interested in that you've been practicing for over 40 years, 20 years
Yeah.
of psychotherapy throughout
Yeah.
at different times. And I understand that you've gotten in touch with the countertransference issues.
Yes.
But what made it a perfect storm? Because
Mhm.
as a therapist, I know 40 years is a long time to have not experienced some type of countertransference. So what made it a perfect storm, and how are you addressing those issues?
Well, first of all, I mean, I would say countertransference is part of the work every day, all day long. Okay, so that's always happening.
Right.
And so I'm actively participating in being able to process that, every day with every person. So I mean, I think the perfect storm that you're discussing, I mean, of which I described my vulnerability to here this morning. I can only say it this way, is that I think, as I put in the application, it's like if someone were to come into my office today who was anywhere near this neighborhood, so to speak, I feel like I could sense it miles away. Okay, I mean, I'm incredibly sensitized, certainly to that specific, and obviously because of all that's happened and what I've been doing here, very sensitized to that. Just in general, any sense of vulnerability to any ethical breach and so on.
I guess I was just also more interested in personal other issues in your life that made you more vulnerable at that time. Because again, as you say, every day we're dealing
Sure.
with those issues.
Sure.
Why that one client? Why that one day? And if we took away the transference issues, was there other things going on, and are you addressing that? I don't need to know what the other issues were,
No.
but are you addressing other aspects of your life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, I think one of the things about having a boundary protection plan is to make sure my work-life balance is definitely something I look at on a regular basis, because it's huge. I mean, as we've heard from other folks here this morning, it's like, being helpers, I certainly am vulnerable, and I think we all are vulnerable to being drawn into that vortex of giving, and not seeing our own burnout. So it's like I certainly, I mean, this has definitely woken me up to that, and to, again, the idea of having to look at that on a regular basis, again and again. And it's not something I can take for granted. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
And the reason why I have a follow-up question is I haven't heard yet necessarily why so much information is in here about your professional activities and development and how they've impacted you.
Mm-hmm.
You even put an annotation in here about, I guess, the book you've written.
Yes.
But very little, once again, about the internal sort of process you've gone to change as a person, not as a therapist. It's clear that you're a very skilled therapist, very skilled psychologist, and so a lot of what I'm hearing today is a very skilled psychologist. But I can't say that I've heard much about, as a, once again, I think I mentioned earlier, remorseful probationer. And so could you just once again help me understand why there is such a dearth of information about the impact on the client and sort of what you have internalized and learned as a person, not a psychologist, a person that will help us be convinced that this will not happen again?
Mm. When I personally, okay, go back to, and in starting with me, uncovered the level of suffering that was unconscious, that was a trigger here. Simultaneous to that, I mean, I know from, a lot of experience that there is, an equal place of suffering out there in the folks that I'm dealing with. Not to mention the person who's specifically in the citation. That level of remorse, empathy, goes into every part of my life at this point, to what it is to be in the world, to what it is to feel, certainly with my children and my family, what it is to feel into just human suffering in general. So, I mean, while as a result of this professional process, I have certainly deepened it. There's not a dividing line here in terms of it affecting me in my life going out into the world. So in terms of just having a real sense of, a much deepened sense of empathy for human suffering in general, I mean, it's a huge deal. I mean, on a day in and day out basis. I mean, I can't watch the news very much. I mean, it's too damn painful. Okay, and that was something that 25 years ago I wouldn't have thought twice about. So if you're asking the question about, has this process affected me as a human being in the world? I mean, I want to resoundingly say yes. In terms of my interactions to other people, yes. In terms of my feeling for other people's struggle out there, empathically, yes.
Do you mind if I slow you down?
Please.
Because that actually was not the question I asked.
Okay.
But I think in not answering it, I have gotten my answer. So thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Your Honor. In your application, once again, you said after the termination of psychotherapy, I met with a former client, so on and so forth in the sentence.
Yeah.
You might have said it before, but excuse me if I missed your answer. Can you tell me one more time why you want to do that if there's no romantic relationship?
She asked me to meet with her on a more casual basis, and that she was, starting out her work in her practice. She asked me.
And then the question is why you accept.
Well, that goes back to what I was just saying previously, which is that my own unconscious vulnerability to that was that she embodied many characteristics of two very significant people in my life, which I described earlier, and that was the trigger.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One further question?
Hi, I'm Gabriel Lam, LCSW member. It's more like two questions in one. Can you tell myself and the board a little bit more about your background in professional training and how your background essentially colors your life?
Oh, wow. Okay. Sure. when I was first in graduate school, I was working on a National Institute of Mental Health grant, and I was a good trained behaviorist, being graduate school at the time, and I began having a number of dreams, essentially, that were overwhelming and frightening to me. And I sought out an analyst, not because I was necessarily interested in seeing an analyst, but an analyst was someone, this particular person was the only person I knew of who took dreams seriously. And so when I did that, I mean, it began a process that I had thought I would never have imagined for myself. I assumed at the time, being fairly young, I think it was probably about 23, 24, I just assumed that I'd be there for 6 months or a year and I would be fine. And I spent the next 4 years in that work, and I'd have to say that work changed my life, and it changed my attitude towards doing this work. I mean, I literally had the experience of feeling like my life had opened up, and that my perspective on the world had been far too narrow. And as a result of that personal experience, as a result of that sense of realizing that I had lived such a very narrow understanding about life, I became incredibly motivated to continue analytic treatment, but then later to seek out analytic training. So I didn't move forward on that because it was a cool thing to do, and I didn't move forward on that because it was somehow going to particularly gain me anything out in the world. But I moved forward on that because I realized I had found a part of myself in that work that I would never have imagined possible. And so part of that was realizing that I had a certain capacity to be able to understand people's dreams and to be able to understand how those dreams portended for very important parts in people's lives. And it was very exhilarating and humbling all at the same time. It continues to be, over all of these years. And so I've had, I don't know if this completely answers your question, but I mean, it's like that sort of thing has continued ever since. I mean, there's a deep desire to share what I've learned, both in terms of teaching, in terms of, particularly being older, wanting to be able to write and to give back in a way.
Is it then fair to say that you see the world mostly through a psychoanalytical or psychodynamic lens?
I would say that that's a piece. I mean, I would say that that's a frame of reference, yes. But I mean, it's like there's much that's come into it. I seek out, kind of every kind of education, like current neurobiological research and so on like that takes it out of the psychoanalytic kind of frame of reference. But also, too, I think you have to appreciate and understand, as you probably do, is that these psychoanalyses are like, very multifaceted and growing and changing all the time. So the old notion of somebody being, on a couch 4 times a week, with an analyst who's a blank screen is no longer the state of the work or the art. I mean, it's something that's continuously evolving, which I feel very much excited about and continue to want to be a part of, which creates an enormous sense of meaning and purpose. I mean, I suppose if anything, one of the things I want to convey is just how meaningful and purposeful the work is to me. I'm excited about it still. I'm very much drawn to it. I mean, and hope to be for as long as I can contribute.
I have another question.
Okay.
Sure.
And I'm gonna try one more time.
Okay.
You have done a fantastic job of articulating how your professional capacities and your professional education and collegial relationships are a benefit to the world in general, and how writing and teaching and doing the other professional things that you do will benefit the people out there. You've done a fantastic job at doing that. But that's not why you're here. And I haven't really heard, well, here's my question. So what are your feelings about the impact of the choices that you made related to this client? How do you feel about those choices that you made and the impact that it has on this person, whoever MT is? Can you talk a little bit about how you feel about what you did and its impact?
I feel an enormous sense of guilt and shame that came with that. I think, as I tried to articulate a little bit ago, I mean, just to know that what I've done has exacerbated someone's distress, has made them feel bad, has made them suffer, I mean, is a level of guilt that, I've carried with me ever since this has happened. I mean, the hardest part was pushing through, not getting rid of, but pushing through the guilt and being able to confront the shame, to be able to come up and out of that, as opposed to involute and pull it all back inside. So being able to stay with that guilt is a tremendous motivator to want to continue to be as responsible as I can possibly be in doing this work, because it caused an enormous level of suffering out there with her.
And I really have one more question, and that's it. Well, we're talking about a man's professional life, so I think it's important for us to be thorough.
Sure.
Would you describe, if any, what relationship you had to the supervisor who is overseeing your practice before you? What relationship you have with the individual who is now supervising your practice? Did you have a relationship with them before? And if so, what was the nature?
I knew of him.
Okay.
I
And
knew of him.
how did you know of him?
I knew of him because he ran an internship program that I had some students who went to.
So would it be fair to say that in that relationship, you and he may have collaborated, had conversations about students, intern practices, maybe the model?
No.
I mean, anything?
No.
So you had students in his program and you never talked to him?
No. I had students who went and had participated in his thing, former students of mine.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
all.
They would have been former students. They would have left your teaching environment and then gone to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was there any follow-up with him at all about them? Any professional contacts? Anything before? Yeah.
Not that I can recall.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I still try to find the answer to my question. You acknowledge you're feeling the shame and the guilt
Yes.
about what you did.
Yes.
Please tell us one more time exactly what's your understanding what you did.
Okay, if I break it down step by step, it's that in going outside of a formal therapeutic relationship, all the container and parameters that are within that were lost. And because of that, whatever left over and unresolved feelings that this person had were now not contained, which caused her a great deal of anxiety, caused her a great deal of frustration, caused her a great deal of suffering. And I caused that. I caused that because of what I did.
Thank you.
Sure.
No, thank you.
One sense I have of listening to your questions has to do with this most recent answer that was given. I caused that. That may be what you needed to hear, because he has taken full responsibility emotionally and behaviorally for what he did, how it impacted this woman, how it impacted his life. And he's not retreating into a place where he can be academic and knowledgeable and write and teach and all that kind of stuff in order to not feel the shame and not feel the guilt and not feel the responsibility. The part of what's unfortunate is, and I know this very, very well, part of the Board of Psychology's accusation has information that isn't accurate. It was believed by the woman, by the person who wrote it, but that doesn't mean it was true. And unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to prepare to let you know what parts of it were inaccurate before you had this meeting. But I think that that's a part of it as well. What I think is that the requirements that I would think would be needed to be met to be able to achieve the relief from probation that he's asking for have been met. There was a pathway about the way that the interactions took place here that made that less clear than it is, but it is clear to me. Thank you.
Okay, so as you both know, the board will be meeting in closed session later today to consider the petition, and after which a decision will be drafted and there will be some decision thereafter. And with that, the matter is submitted and the record is closed. And if you wait a second, we'll do a copy of the court report. And I know that it's 12 o'clock. I think it's probably good time for lunch break. Okay, so it's currently 11:59. Why don't we reconvene at 1:15 to get started with the last two petitions? Okay, so that's what we'll do. We need that. All right, I will open the record in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation filed by Jaime Cruz. This bears Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2018-101170. And I apologize, I don't have the other agency case number for this one. Actually, hold on a second, I might.
Look at my notice of hearing.
Oh, I do. Agency case number 2002-002-014-000098. Today's date is November 28th, 2018. My name is Deborah Nye Perkins, and I am an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I have been assigned to sit with the quorum of the Board of Behavioral Sciences today to consider this petition. May I take appearances for the record, please, from counsel?
Good afternoon, Molly Selway, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 2760.1 and Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you, Ms. Selway. And Mr. Cruz, you're here representing yourself, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I know you were here earlier today observing the other hearings, so the procedure is the same as you saw before. Ms. Selway presents her evidence, and then you get an opportunity to present yours. So before we get started, the first thing I'm going to do is mark the documents, and I know you have documents in front of you. The first document I'm going to mark is the actual petition for early termination of probation and its attachments. I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 1, and I note the first page of that is actually an email document forwarding that petition. So that's all marked as Exhibit 1. And then under tab 2, I'm going to mark as Exhibit 2 the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, as well as the statement of issues. I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 2. Under tab 3 is psychotherapy quarterly reports. I'll mark that document as Exhibit 3. And Ms. Selway, am I to be concerned about any confidential information in that document?
Yes, Your Honor, we'd like this document sealed. This is confidential information, medical.
Okay, all right, so that will be placed under seal, I'm assuming, once it's admitted.
Thank you,
Okay.
Your Honor.
Are there any other documents I need to be concerned with?
No, Your Honor, that's the only one.
Okay.
The only
The
one.
next tab 4 is the hearing notice. I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 4. And then finally, under Exhibit 5 is the license and registration history. I'll mark that as Exhibit 5. Any further documents to mark, Ms. Selway?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Cruz, do you have any additional documents you need to have marked?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. And I'm assuming you'd like to move these into evidence, Ms. Selway.
Yeah.
Mr. Cruz, do you have any objections to that?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so I'm going to admit on Exhibits 1 through 5 and note that Exhibit 3 is admitted and placed under seal. Okay. Ms. Selway, a summary statement.
Thank you. We are here today on a petition for early termination of probation. Petitioner applied for an associate marriage and family therapist registration on or about August 29th, 2013, and was denied on February 27th, 2014, due to substantially related criminal convictions and using alcohol in a dangerous manner. Specifically, petitioner was convicted of a DUI in 2004, a DUI in 2007, assault in 2008, and a DUI with collisions and priors in 2013. With the last matter, petitioner rear-ended another vehicle and had a BAC of .204 and also .19.
I'm sorry, was that the year 2013?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the BACs were .204 and the subsequent test was .19. A statement of issues was filed on October 22nd, 2014, and the board adopted the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, which issued, immediately revoked, stayed, and placed petitioner's license on probation for 5 years with alcohol and drug terms, effective July 15th, 2015. Petitioner is fully compliant with probation, including psychotherapy, quarterly reports, biological fluid testing, dependency support program, relapse prevention program, and the standard terms and conditions. Petitioner initially did not have clear understanding of the expectations for cost recovery. Once clarification was provided, petitioner has paid the appropriate monthly payments. There is a remaining balance of $2,682, which petitioner is required to pay if he is granted early termination. Thank you.
Sorry, how much was that amount outstanding?
So $2,682.
Thank you.
It's petitioner's burden to demonstrate that he is rehabilitated and safe to practice, and that his probation should be terminated. Therefore, we have nothing further at this time, but reserve the right to cross-examine petitioner or call him if he does not choose to testify. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Selway. All right, Mr. Cruz, I'm going to place you under oath. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm under the penalty of perjury to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this hearing today?
I do.
Okay. And again, I have this information, but could you please state and spell your full name for me?
My first name is Jaime, last name is Cruz, Jaime, last name Cruz.
Okay. And what is your current age, sir?
46.
Okay. Are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
Where?
I work for Children's Bureau in Lancaster, California.
Children's Bureau.
Bureau.
And what is your position there?
I'm a therapist.
What type of therapy do you provide?
I'm under the program that's IFCCS, which is Intensive Field Capable Clinical Services.
Okay. And how long have you had that position?
I got promoted to that position about maybe, I want to say, 7 months. But I've been with the agency for about 3 years since I started working in September 1st, 2015.
Okay. And were you a therapist prior to your current position as well?
Yes, ma'am. I was working under the wraparound program as a CFS, which is child family therapist.
What would you like to tell the board today about why we're here?
Well, I would like to first start with my statement that I, Jaime Cruz, I am an alcoholic. Basically, you know, from the stipulations that I got, that I see in front of me, which was 20 stipulations, I feel I had completed at least almost all 20 within the 3 years and a half that I've been in probation. Again, I'm attending psychotherapy right now. I attend psychotherapy once a week. However, even though I don't meet medical necessity with me attending therapy, I'm fine with it. That's something that has been helping me in my life. I'm learning from my therapist. One of the things that we focused a lot was on step 2, again, being honest to myself. And that's one thing. That's why I wanted to start my statement with Jaime Cruz. I'm an alcoholic, even though I can say I was a social drinker. But again, alcohol is an issue that I have. My parents were alcoholics, so it runs in the family. So I completed the relapse program. I continue to test. At this point, you know, the only things that like the attorney said that I haven't completed is my cost reimbursement, even though it's a lot of money, but I have to pay for it. I'm willing to do that. And at first, yes, I didn't understand how that whole payment was, but I'm glad that my probation analyst was able to clarify. Actually, the second probation analyst that came on board with me was able to clarify all that. And since then, I've been on time paying my payments and doing what I have to do. So at this point, I can say that within 3 years and a half, I've been rehabilitated. I don't want to sound like the guy for Shawshank Redemption, where he went to the board over and over and it was denied. I want to be able to say that, you know, I have learned. I think all this experience is a learning process for me. Regardless, I'm not here to make any excuses. I'm here to just be accountable for what I've done. But the most important thing is I've learned from it. And I will continue to learn from it, regardless of whether I get early terminated or not. The way I look at it is that if I could do 3.5 years, I'm sure I could do another 1.5 years. My attitude, it's what brings me here. I have a very great positive attitude. I'm sure you guys all read the letters. That's exactly who I am. I'm no one better than anybody else, from the first presenters to myself to the last presenter. I am just me. I'm here to just let you know that, again, I have rehabilitated. I'm looking forward to move forward with my life. I do just want to share a little bit of my history. I grew up in South Central LA. My parents passed away when I was 11 and 13. I'm from second generation, first graduate from high school and college. To this day, I'm still the first graduate from college out of my family members, which is about maybe 21 nephews and nieces. I was, you know, involved in gangs in South Central. Regardless of my gang involvement, I feel like no matter what I did there, it brought me to where I'm at now. This is why I feel that I am in the right position as a therapist. Again, one of the things when I looked at the stipulations, I wasn't too shocked because, again, I'm being held accountable for what I did. I just looked at it as it's only going to make me stronger, and it has made me a stronger individual. If I can do this, I can do anything in life, and that's what I've learned from this. That no matter what comes in front of you, obstacles are always going to be in front of us, but it's how you overcome them. And I have overcome each and one of them. I do want to just share a piece of my life, not to have any pity on me, but I still remember when I didn't get my license and I was going from job interview to job interview, and each door was closed right in my face. At that point, I felt like, you know what, I can try to apply for Walmart. I can apply for Costco. But I went to apply for this to do roofing. And roofing is one of the most hardest job I ever done in my life. I became an apprentice. I went through training for them. And I told myself, no matter what, I'm going to do this. I remember one time, one of my biggest fears is heights. But I remember one of my times being at this building of 5 stories. To me, that's high. When I was working up there, I just looked down upon and said, you know what? Again, if I can do this, if I can spread all this tar on this roof, then I can do anything in life. It took me about 6 months to realize, waking up at 3 a.m. to be there at 5 a.m. at different job sites, not just in LA, but in different cities, that I knew that no matter what, I will fight to the finish. And that's what I'm doing. I am fighting, and I will never give up, regardless of what I have to go through. If my parents' death didn't stop me, nothing can stop me. And I know that for a fact. God is good, my will is good, and I'm in a good place right now. Regardless of what anybody says about me or how they judge me or how they think of me, I'm in a good, safe place. And I am safe. I can say I'm safe to practice because I've shown it in my agency. When I asked, every agency asks for a second chance. And we always hear it in different songs or different movies. We say people deserve a second chance. When Children's Bureau gave me that second chance, I proved to them that I can do this. And I have done it with dignity, with integrity, with dedication, with commitment. I am here to work for these children. That's my passion. I think God gave me that gift, and I'm willing to spread it out. So that's where I'm at. I mean, regardless, again, like I said, whether I get early terminated or not, I can do 1.5 years more with good, positive attitude and standing on my 2 feet. I can do that. But it would be great if I could be early terminated. That'll be the best. But again, I'm ready for anything. I am here. I'm standing on my 2 feet by myself. That's all I have to say. Any questions, feel free. I mean, it's what you guys want to know from me. I'm ready.
Okay, cross-examination.
Thank you. I like your positivity. Let's talk quickly about, or briefly about your history with alcohol abuse. When is your date of sobriety?
It was right after July 4th. July 5th, 2015 is when my sobriety started.
Okay. Why that date?
Because I knew that regardless of, when I got the stipulation, I didn't know whether I was going to get granted or not. I just felt that was my time. July 4th, I'm not going to lie, again, honesty takes me a long way. I got really drunk on July 4th. And on July 5th is the day I woke up and say, this is it. If it's not now, I don't know when it's going to be. But at that time is when I made my decision that July 5th was going to be my sobriety day. And I can say I'm 3.5 years sober from that day.
Okay. And how did you get sober? Did you immediately enroll in AA? Explain your process.
When I was asked to do the relapse program, I seeked the program through Tarzana Treatment Center, which is in Lancaster. The funny part is that I used to work for Tarzana Treatment Center. So when I went back to enroll in that program, I had to face a lot of my ex-coworkers. But again, I did it with my eye contact and no embarrassment. This is not about being embarrassed. This is about who you are and that you can do whatever you want. So I went in there and I told them, yes, this is me, Jaime Cruz. I used to be a youth counselor here, but now I am on the other side of the wall. I'm here to enroll in your relapse programs for 6 months. The program was very intense. Never did I thought, and again, we never think we're going to be there. So I did the program. I was testing there as well. And that's when I started doing my AAs. Till this day, I still attend AAs twice a week, sometimes 3 weeks. I go to a lot of the seminars. I love when guest speakers talk because, again, we learn from them. I have a sponsor. She's a big help. There's times that, yes, I do call her and let her know when there is temptation. No matter where I go, temptation is always going to be there. Even this past Thanksgiving, there's temptation because your family members are drinking. But what do? I do it with my willpower. I tell myself I can sit there and watch them. I could even serve them a beer if I want to, but it's up to me whether I want to drink or not. And I choose not to drink. So at this point, I still attend AA meetings. I haven't tested positive since I've been testing, which I'm very proud of myself. So that's where I'm at. Again, at any time, I'm not perfect. I'm human. If I ever decide to relapse, that's up to me. But at this point, I feel that where I'm at in my life, I'm in a good place.
Okay. You mentioned your sponsor. How long have you had this sponsor?
I started with Sophia for about maybe almost 2 years. I would say 2.5 years after I finished the relapse program is when she came aboard. I met her in one of the AA meetings. And actually, she works for the alcohol program. I didn't get a letter from her. That's one thing. I lost track of that, but she's just been very positive. She still works at the DUI program, and no matter what, again, when I need her, she's there for me.
Okay. How often do you communicate with your sponsor?
When there's temptation. When the temptation comes in, I have to call her, and I let her know, you know what? It's my brother-in-law's birthday. They're drinking heavily. You know, the Patron shots come out, and I am right now feeling like I need to talk to you. And she tells me, just think about how far you come, and that's what motivates me when she tells me that.
Okay. And are you a sponsor to anybody else?
No, ma'am, I'm not.
Okay. So you go to AA twice a week. And do you go to therapy right now?
Yes, I am. I go to therapy once a week.
And if your early termination petition is granted, would you continue with therapy?
Again, like I stated, I don't need medical necessities, but if I have to, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. At this point, I feel that my therapists have been supported, and I don't see it from therapist to therapist. I see it from therapist to client. She has helped me a lot, and I have opened up to her in many other things that I, as a child, that I wasn't able to, because back then, you know, especially in our culture, we don't believe in therapy. But now that I am taking therapy, I'm able to open up and let her know many things in my past that I've never even talked about with other people.
Okay, so you find it helpful?
Yes, very helpful. I think, you know, she's have helped me to open up and be able to be, again, genuine and honest to myself, especially to myself.
Other than your AA and your sponsor and your therapist, what other support systems do you have?
Well, you know, I wish I can say that I wanted my parents to be around, but unfortunately they're not. I mean, I come from a family of three sisters and two other brothers. Regardless of what they're going through in their life, they're a big support. I actually live with my youngest sister. And, you know, even when they text you in the morning and tell you good luck, that means so much, because, again, they're thinking about what I'm going through. And regardless, again, I know that they're there for me. So my family's been a support. I believe my supervisors that I work with through Children's Bureau are a support. I do have a lot of friends that are support. Some of my friends, ex-co-workers that I continue to communicate from the regional center, wrote letters themselves. So I feel I have a good support of people that can help me out.
So you have your family, your therapist, AA, and your coworkers and friends, supervisor.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you ever have any intentions of drinking again?
Like I said, temptation is very difficult. Yes, of course, you know, it comes through my mind. But again, it's my willpower that makes me just say no. And I know I can say no. A lot of times we don't like to hear the word no. But in this case, for me, I love the word no, because I can say no, I don't need to drink. I love to party. I am a dancer. That's one of my self-cares. I joined the hip-hop class. I'm in a hip-hop class right now. And I can go to a club and party all night and have a great time without the alcohol. And if there's always many ways you can substitute it, whether it's water, whether it's virgin margarita, whatever it is. But again, I feel that I can be anywhere, and it's up to me whether I want to make that decision or not.
When you were drinking alcohol, were you drinking an excessive amount, or was it?
I wasn't drinking. I mean, again, when I was partying and I was going to clubs, I can say yes. At that point, I lost control and I was drinking excessively. But it wasn't like I was drinking daily. I don't drink daily. Again, I drink when I go out or when there's a party. But again, there's no excuses. I drink.
And why do you want probation to be terminated now?
I feel that, 3.5 years, I gave 3.5 years all in. It would be just great for, just to wake up and not pick up that phone and call for testing. But again, I always say, and I say it again, I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but if I can do 3.5 years, I can do 1.5 more. One of the biggest challenges that I had the ignition interlock for 2 years in my vehicle. And if I can blow on that thing more than 5 times a day or 10 times, 15 times, and I'm not ashamed of it, I can do anything. Again, that interlock was a challenge. There was times that you would just violate because either you rinse your mouth with skull, whatever. But again, no excuses. I did it, and I did it for 2 years. So again, I know that I can do whatever I have to do for myself. I'm speaking for me, no one else.
And have you gone through all 12 steps?
I did go through all the 12 steps, and I feel like my therapist helped me with step 2, which is, again, going back to being honest to myself. First, I share a story. One of my nephews, he's my godson. When he was a baby, I really was attached to him. And I told people that he was my son. And I told coworkers that he was my son. And I went through that story for quite a while until he was about 13 years old. Now he's 21 years old. When I started therapy, that was one of my things that I opened up to my therapist, that I was lying to people that I had this son, and when in reality he was my nephew. He's my godson as well, so that's why probably I was so close. And not only that, when he was growing up, he would refer me as his dad. So that's why the bond was like that. And I just figured it was that easy for me to say that he was my son, when in reality he wasn't. But I was able to open up to that, and now I accept that he's my nephew. And, and I went back to several people, and I was honest to them and say, it's tough to confront you, but I have to let you know, because you guys are always wishing me happy Father's Day. And I have to let you know. And so that's a big thing that I have to confront those individuals and let them know. But I'm okay. I'm at peace with that.
Have you had any relapses?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any other criminal convictions?
No, ma'am. Not since my last DUI.
Okay. How will you prevent any relapse?
I think, again, we go back to, if we go look at prevention, I mean, there's so many ways we can prevent it. I mean, again, people ask me, why don't you stay away from your family members? Why don't you stay away from the clubs? Again, I'm not going to stop my life just because, I've gotten these things. Again, I feel that within is where it comes from. I tell myself there's no need for it. If there is another time in my life that I do decide to relapse, that'll be something that I really have to think about. Again, no one's perfect. We're all humans, and it's going to happen whether we admit it or not. I feel that at this point in my life, I'm ready to say that, no, I'm not going to allow this no more, because I know what it has cost me, the consequences, and it's not an easy consequence. I feel like I've been like double jeopardy. I already paid for my prior conviction through the law, and now here I'm paying this one, but it's okay, because that's why I feel this has been a learning process for me. So of course the prevention is me keep talking to my sponsor. When I called her, even on Thanksgiving, when we said grace and we were holding hands, I looked at all of them and I said, you know what? If I really wanted you to serve me a glass of wine, I could have asked you to serve me the glass of wine, but I said instead, serve me the soda that you usually serve me, or the water. So again, there's any time I can go ahead and relapse, but I choose not to. And I see that my family members, my nephews, are so proud of what I've done, because I am a role model to them. And I tell them, if I can do it, you can do it. Not just to my family, but to my clients. No matter what, you can do anything in life if you really want to.
Do you plan on continuing going to AA?
I definitely, one of the things is I enjoy what's out there. I go to the Hispanic AA meetings. There's so much interested. These guys are, a lot of the guys most of them are guys. But I learn from them because they are so hard worker guys. They work on construction, they work on the freeways. And then these guys, no matter that career they have, I'm no different than them. But I learn from them because they also lose so much in their lives. They lose their wives, they lose their children. I don't have no children, I'm not married. But I can see what they lose, and I learn from that. So if at one point I ever had it, I know what I can lose as well.
And then my just last question about self-care. Other than your hip-hop class, what do you do for self-care?
I do so many, I'm not going to say so many things because I don't want you guys to, because there's time for everything. If you ever want to do anything, you can do it. One of the other things I do is I'm a choreographer. I don't know if you guys ever heard of quinceañeras. But quinceañeras, I do quinceañeras. I teach the waltz. I teach the surprise dance, what we call now surprise dance, because they add that now. I do that. I do work out every morning. I go jogging. I love jogging. I used to be in cross country, so that's something that I always carry with me. I jog every morning. Again, dancing is my passion. I love to dance. No matter where I go, even now, if I would like to get up, I'll dance. I'll show you a routine because I just love it so much. Now, my wish was to become a dancer for either Janet Jackson or Michael Jackson. But back then, you don't have that. Back then, growing up in South Central, that wasn't what we had. We had the gangs, and that's where I learned, and that's who I am, and I'm not ashamed of that. I could say I learned from it, and I'm just glad that I didn't end up in prison like my brothers. My brother was 14 years old, and he was convicted of a murder at 14. But that doesn't make me no difference than him. Now they both reside in TJ because they both been deported, and when I see the other side of them, I know I have a good life, but they have a good life too, regardless of the poverty or not. They have a good life. And we're fortunate that even though my parents are not here, we're okay. We're good.
I have no further questions.
Okay, all right. I'm going to open it up to the board to ask questions. And this time I'm going to start on this side. Does anyone have any questions on this side?
Yeah, I also want to echo noticing your resilience to have come out of such a challenging childhood and make it this far, and to understand your problem with alcohol as a binge drinker, which is sometimes easier to have denial about. In some ways, yeah, you've made a lot of assertions about how important it is for you not to fall off the wagon and to remain sober. Yeah, and I can see why you would not be giving up your family or Latino, that's part of your culture. So having to be around it all the time. Can you give, actually, I think that what would help is, can you give a recent example of where you've been tempted and exactly what you did in that moment, and a specific example to maintain your sobriety?
So I remember, again, and I think it goes back to this one party where, when I was drinking, one of my sister's friends, she makes the best Jello shots. And because I'm always very helpful, I was putting them away in the refrigerator so they can kind of stay nice and cold. And for when the guests arrived, they were ready for them. I remember grabbing one. And I say, no one's going to notice. One's not going to harm me. And I took it to my room. And I told myself, you know what? If I want to, I could. But again, going back to being honest to myself, there's no need to. So when I was trying to go trying to hide it, my sister caught me. And she said, why do you have it? And I told her because I was going to take it, but I brought it back. No matter what, you were going to notice there was one missing. So she helped me put it back. And that's when I called Sophia, my sponsor, and I let her know. Say, hey, I was about to. And she reminded me, you come so far. There's no need for that. My family is very supportive because in the beginning when I started this whole process, yes, they were still offering me the alcohol. Now they don't offer me the alcohol. They offer me the water or my Coke. That's what they offer me. And they know that, and they all respect that. All my friends, all the people that I still go out, now they know what to offer me. If the drink comes along, that's fine, but I don't have to take it. And so sometimes they're going to forget, and there is some that forget, and they still bring it to me. I just don't take it. And I said, thank you, but I'm going to take some water or some Coke. So I feel that because of my attitude and because of what I've been through, like I said, I know I have that willpower. No matter what, people can tell me, yes, I can relapse, and yes, I can go back to it. But at this point, I don't want to do that.
You are on the right path, even though you're very early in your sobriety, But I'm sure you, at your AA meetings, you've seen other people who have not done well with more years of sobriety. So I just want to acknowledge that, but that how it sounds like you're on a really good, strong path right now. If you were, or when you're no longer on probation, whether that's sooner or later, what would change in your life in terms of your therapy, your participation in AA? Obviously, you wouldn't do testing, but
I think when, you know, when it comes part of your life, it's a routine now, it's a habit. So things are going to happen. I will continue doing what I have to do because it's helped me a lot, and I can see where it's gotten me. So all the things that I've done to where I'm at now, it's helped me get here. Nothing would have been possible if I wouldn't gone to the AAs. Nothing would be possible if I hadn't gone to that relapse program. Because in that relapse program, when one of the counselors saw me there, and he said, "What are you doing on that sign?" Say, "Hey, I'm human. I'm okay. I'm just here to do the 6-month program." And I know that no matter what, again, even if it's 3 years, 7 years, I've seen people that have been 20 years sober and they relapse, but they go right back into it and they do what they have to do. Yeah. Can I be 25 years sober? If God gives me the will, yes. Can I relapse? Yes. But do I choose to? No.
all right. So it sounds like AA would continue to be a part
Definitely.
of your life.
I love to hear people's stories because I learn from them.
And what about therapy?
Therapy, again, like I said, it comes out of my pocket.
Yeah. So it's a little painful right now.
It's a lot painful. Yeah. I got wounds from it. But if I've been paying it for 3.5 years, why can I continue paying it years and years from now? My therapist has even tried to get my Kaiser insurance to pay for it. She got me at one point when I didn't have a job, I applied for Medi-Cal and food stamps because I couldn't find a job. So through Medi-Cal, covered it for a year. So no matter what I have to do, I'll do it if I have to. Again, I built a great relationship with my therapist. She's taught me so much. And again, she guides me through it. As every week she tells me, sometimes people say, well, there's nothing I can talk to her about. There's a lot we can talk about. Okay. That's what therapy is about.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, and and it's very difficult, for your background and be able to, get out of the old lifestyle like the gang and like you talked about. So I just want to clarify one thing. So you said that your sobriety date is July 5th, 2015. Okay, and your last conviction is January 14, 2013. Right. So can you explain to us about that period of time, about close to actually 2.5 years? So what happened? What is your alcohol pattern? So
after I got the last DUI, of course, it was a little bit more than the first two. The last one was I was in a car accident. And to be honest, again, we go back to the honesty. I could invade. I could have invaded the scene and everything and just leave and do. But I stood there. I stood there because I said, I caught this. I'm going to stay here. It's my responsibility. So when I saw that day, I was supposed to jump on the freeway, on the 405. And for some reason, I missed the freeway. I feel that if I was to jump on that freeway, I probably wouldn't be here speaking to you guys right now, whether it was me or whether it was the other vehicle. The other vehicle that I hit was I hit him from rear end, so I hit him from rear end. Luckily, nothing damage happened to the two young kids. They did evade the scene. They left the scene after we were trying to exchange information. I stayed there and waited for the cops. Mm-hmm. So for me, during those 2.5 years, of course, even when all these doors were being closed in my face, saying that I couldn't get a job, and I wasn't even aware that this was going to happen to me. Maybe that's how naive I was. Because when I applied for my license in August, when I got my master's in August 2013, and then I applied, I had no clue this was going to come and hit me in my face. So I was naive on that part. Yes, I've heard it in class, but I'm thinking, you know what, this is not going to affect me because I did it before I don't even have my license or my intern number. During those 2.5 years, yes, I was still socializing. I was still drinking, but I wasn't drinking because I was depressed. I wasn't drinking because I was stressful. That I always just, again, if I was socially drinking, I would just drink. But it wasn't like I became more depressed and say, oh, I'm going to drink every day just because I'm not going to move forward. People say that life pauses, but my life didn't pause. I continued living my life. And I had to do whatever I had to do to get where I'm at now. So within those 2.5 years, if I was drinking or not, that's why even like in July 4th, for some reason, I don't know, it just snapped on me. Like if someone just told me, that's it, you're done. On July 4th, like I said, I got really drunk. If I would have got another DUI, it probably would have been higher than 2. And so that day is when I told myself, July 5th, I woke up with a bad hangover, and I said, this is it. And it is, this is it. So I know that no matter what I've done in the past, because for me, it's a learning process. Here's where I'm at. I know what consequences I can face, so I'm just not willing to go through all this no more. It's too much for any person.
So I guess that, I want to clarify that, because when you had your last conviction, you were required by the court, to attend different programs. So are you saying that, that, during the time when you were participating, that time you were still socially drinking?
Well, after I got the ignition interlock, after that I stopped drinking because so like when I got it when I was convicted in January 2013, I didn't get the interlock until June something. And so then at that point I stopped drinking because the interlock detects the alcohol. But it wasn't like I didn't say that was my sobriety day. I didn't mark it as that day. I marked it as when I said July 5th is when I said this is it. But once I got my interlock, there was no drinking for me because, again, the interlock does detect it.
So the interlock system is required by the court?
Yes.
Not the relapse prevention program?
No, the prevention program came from BBS.
Okay.
Yes, and I didn't enroll there until February, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think your terms and condition was effective on July 15,
2015.
So it's a couple weeks before, you say this is it. So that's why I'm trying to, grasp is like, if it's not for the, for the process of the board, getting you, to the license, whether you will actually stop drinking. I'm just wondering.
Right.
What do you think?
I mean, I when I saw the stipulations, regardless, again, if it was a sign for me to stop, I needed to stop because, again, like I said, I could have caused a major accident that day, and I do look back, and I am remorseful for even like the rear end hitting. I feel bad for that, but like I said, the kids ran out of the scene, and I stayed there. So at that point, like I said, the court did ask me to put the interlock, and I think it took me about maybe a couple of months because financially I had quit my job at the regional center. So because feeling that I was going to get my intern number, I was going to be able to practice right away. I didn't practice right away, but when they asked me to get the interlock, that's when I actually stopped drinking. But I didn't mark it as my sobriety day. I could go back and say that probably was my sobriety day, but like to me, July 5th was when I said, this is it.
Thank you very much.
I want to say I am very impressed with the trajectory that your life has taken, considering the things that have happened to you in your life. I'm very sorry for the loss of your parents. I know growing up in the inner city and growing up in communities where violence and gangs, has the potential to lead people down a particular track, but I'm glad to see that you have been able to sort of move in a different direction. So congratulations, and
Thanks.
I'm very glad about that. But one question I have is related to sort of what you have described so far is a lot of sort of white knuckling and willpower to keep you from drinking, which we know as clinicians, I'm a MFT, has a shelf life. And for certain people, it may be a little longer than others, but in most cases, something comes along in life that overwhelms sort of their capacity to white knuckle it, and they do fall back into previous unhealthy patterns. I'm wondering, what other supports do you have in your safety net besides just white knuckling that you would continue if you were released from probation to, support your sobriety? I don't know.
Well,
if there's
like I stated, my family is the number one, because that's what you have. We all have family, and I live with them. I have nephews that are now looking up to me, and I want to be able to, even though, again, I'm still the first one that has graduated from college with a bachelor's and a master's, I still want to be that role model and let them know that no matter what comes through life, you can do it. So my family has been a big support. Like I said, I have no problem attending psychotherapy once a week. I'm not going to stop the AA meetings because, again, like I said, it's a learning process, and we learn and we take that information with us to be able to, share with others. And that's what I do. My sponsor has been great. Again, like I said, if I have to pick up the phone right now and let her know, hey, guess what? My court went well. I'm about to drink. I can do that. I know I can call and give her a call and say, hey, you know what? Everything went well, but I don't need a drink. So I do have the support. My supervisors right now at Children's Bureau, they believe in me. And in one of my letters, when I read it, he even stated that at one point he sees me as a supervisor there. And for me, that's a big compliment, because regardless of what I've been through, if he can believe that, I can believe it on myself that I can get there too.
That's fantastic. How frequently do you speak to your sponsor?
Like I said, as needed, and I can speak to her anytime. She's always available. She'll know when I pick up, it's because she knows that I'm tempting. When I call her, she'll know, oh, you were about to drink. So again, I visit her. I see her in the seminars. She invites me to guest speaker seminars. Those are the most ones that I love, when I hear people's stories, and she comes with me. I go with her when she invites me. So I attend those.
Thank you. No further questions.
Hi. I also want to echo what everyone else said. I'm really impressed by how far you've come. So it's a brief question, and it kind of piggybacks off of his question, and you never quite answered it. So just specifically, how often do you speak with your sponsor? I mean, I know she's available all the time, but roughly in the last month, how many times?
In the last month, I probably spoke with her about 4 times.
Okay.
And that's just checking back in with the 12 steps, reminding me especially about step 2, the one that I've been working with my therapist. Just continue being honest, because that's what's brought me here. So every time I need to self-check myself, it's when I call her. And she helps me self-check myself. It's again, letting me know how far I come.
Do you only speak with her when you feel a need to drink, or do you ever call her about other
No, I even speak with her when when I ask her, is there any seminars coming up? Is there anything I can do to help out in the community? Is there any times that, again, when there's Thanksgiving, I like to go help out during the Thanksgiving, when the AAs are, because again, AAs are open all day 24. So when there's events like that, I like to help out. Even if I have to go make the coffee, I'm one of those. And I still, donate my $1 for that, just to buy coffee. So again, she's always around, and I know what AA meeting she is around.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, Your Honor.
Can I show you guys one of my moves? Not just kidding. No, just kidding.
All right, so as you heard from the other hearings, the board's going to meet in closed session later today with the petition, and that's going to time period to draft the actual decision, and you have decisions sometime thereafter. Okay?
Thank you.
The matter is submitted and the record is closed. We'll wait a second, I'll move the court order form. This is a 5-minute break.
Thank you. Looks good.
Okay, I will open the record in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation filed by Elizabeth Maloney. This bears Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2018-101171, agency case number 2002-015-000902. Today's date is November 28th, 2018. My name is Deborah Nye Perkins, and I am an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I'm assigned to sit today with a quorum of the Board of Behavioral Sciences, which is convened here today to consider this petition. May I take appearance, please, of counsel for the record?
Good afternoon, Molly Selway Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 2760.1 and Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you, Ms. Selway. And Ms. Maloney, you're here representing yourself. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I know you've been patiently observing the other hearings with regard to the procedure. It will be the same. Ms. Selway will present her evidence, and then you'll have an opportunity to do the same and may have questions afterwards. I'm going to first mark documents, which I assume you have in front of you, Ms. Maloney, correct?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to do that first. And if you look under tab 1, it is the petition for early termination of probation and attached documents. I'm going to mark all of that as Exhibit 1. Under tab 2 is a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order. I'm going to mark all of that as Exhibit 2. Under tab 3 are psychological evaluation and hearing-specific release of information related to those, and I would presume, Ms. Selway, this contains confidential medical information. Am I correct?
It does, Your Honor.
All right. I'm going to mark all of those as Exhibit 3, and I'm assuming you want to admit these documents as well.
Yes.
That we're marking. Ms. Maloney, do you have any objections to my admitting this document at all?
No.
Okay. I'm going to admit the document and place it under seal. And then the next tab are psychotherapy quarterly reports. I'm going to mark all of those as Exhibit 4. And again, Ms. Selway, I would presume that this contains confidential medical information. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. In that case, I'm going to place it under seal as well. Do you have any objections to my receiving those documents, Ms. Maloney?
No.
Okay. 4 is admitted and also placed under seal. That takes us to tab 5, which is the hearing notice, and I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 5. And then the last tab is the license registration history. I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 6. And Ms. Selway, I assume you want to admit these remaining documents 1 through 6 that haven't already been admitted, correct?
I do, Your Honor.
And do you have any objection to those documents, Ms. Maloney?
No.
Okay. Exhibits 1 through 6 are admitted, and again, Exhibits 3 and 4 are placed under seal. Okay. All right. Ms. Selway, would you like to provide a summary statement?
I would. We're here today on a petition for early termination of probation. Petitioner was issued licensed educational psychologist license number LEP 2538 on or about January 17th, 2001. Petitioner was convicted of a DUI with a BAC of 0.14% on April 9th, 2005. The facts behind the DUI were that she was observed swerving in and out of her lane and hitting several delineators located near the center of the median of the freeway. Based upon that DUI, an accusation was filed on March 2nd, 2016, and the board adopted a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, which immediately revoked, stayed, and placed petitioners on probation for 5 years with optional and standard terms and conditions, which include alcohol and drug terms. The stipulated settlement disciplinary order is effective October 7th, 2016. To date, petitioner has been compliant with probation. She has completed her psychological evaluation, which was completed on December 23rd, 2016. She has completed her psychotherapy quarterly reports. She has attended the dependency support program. She's also completed her remedial education. She is fully compliant with biological fluid testing, and she has paid her cost recovery in full. She is fully compliant with all standard terms and conditions. It is petitioner's burden to demonstrate that she is rehabilitated and safe to practice, and that her petition should be granted. Therefore, we have nothing further this time, but reserve the right to cross-examine our petitioner or call her if she does not choose to testify. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Maloney, I'm going to place you under oath, okay? Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this hearing today?
Yes.
Okay. And I have this information. Could you please state and spell your full name for me?
It's Elizabeth Maloney, ELIZABETHMALONEY.
Okay, and what is your current age?
52.
Are you currently employed?
I'm self-employed as an LEP.
as an LEP?
Licensed educational psychologist.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Just for the record.
Sorry, yes. And
How long have you done that?
since I've had my license since 2001. And my LEP number is 2528. I just want to make sure it gets recorded correctly.
Ah, yes, I don't believe that was the correct number she
Right,
provided.
so that's what I just
She said
wanted to-
2538.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay,
Just want to make sure that.
all right. And what would you like to tell the board today about why we're here?
First, I want to thank you all for hearing my petition for early termination. I appreciate the difficult job that you all have, and never in a million years did I imagine that I would be sitting in this seat here before you. This process has been very humbling, and I'm ashamed that my actions, not only for the relapse in my integrity, but also for the tarnishment of the profession that I upheld to serve. There's a saying in the Bible in Luke that says, "To whom more is given, more is expected." And I'm disappointed and ashamed of myself for not living up to those standards. The board sets high standards on integrity, and we should be there to provide the model, and I was not a very good model in this situation. That said, since my DUI in November 16, 2014, I've worked very diligently to make sure that this never will occur again. I made a huge mistake and a lapse of judgment when I drove under the influence, and I thank God every day that I did not physically injure or harm anyone. There was a lot of emotional harm and damage done to myself, to my family, to my reputation, and I've worked really hard to repair those things. I was embarrassed and humiliated by my actions, and shortly after my incident, I decided that I needed to take corrective measures to ensure that those behaviors would not ever be repeated again. So I've always been a kind of driven person. I set a goal, I'm very goal-oriented, I figure it out, a plan, and do it. And so I enrolled in a first offender DUI program even before I went to court. In fact, by the time I went to court, I had almost completed it. My court hearing was in April, and I completed it in the first week of May. So I had already done that. I had already decided. From that incident and having, I know some of the local police officers in my area, and having been arrested in my local area and being there, that was very embarrassing. I spent only 3 hours in jail, but those were 3 hours way too many. And then subsequently having to go back and report to the county because I didn't spend enough time in the system having to do that. That's somewhere I never want to be again. And so I've worked really hard to try to figure out what could I do to make sure that that would not happen again. And so, like I said, I enrolled in the DUI program. I started to look at myself. What could I do? What could I change? How did I let that happen? And part of what I realized through this whole process is that I didn't do a lot of self-care. I'm kind of a perfectionist. I'm very orderly. I have high standards. And I never gave myself, it was okay not to be perfect. What I've learned through counseling is it's okay not to be perfect, and you don't have to fix everything. And that's probably something 4 years ago I could have never said. So for those reasons, I'm grateful for this process. I'm sad that it has happened, but the process has made me a better person, and I think it will make me better to help with the clients that I work with. So like I said, I had gotten out of self-care. I hadn't really learned how to take time for myself on a regular basis. And through, I can tell you that when I first got assigned through the probation to go to the substance chemical dependency meetings, I was resentful and I hated them. And I thought, why am I here and what am I going to learn from this? So after going for the first month or so, and I knew that I was going to be here maybe for up to 5 years, I figured, well, what the hell can I take away from this? So I decided to change my attitude. And from that, I really started to focus on the steps, and I used step 4. Which says that you should make a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourselves. And I try to reflect on this on a regular basis now. I think we all have room for improvement, and I use that as I've applied it to my life on a regular basis. Self-evaluation is easy in others, and it's easy to criticize and look from other people's perspective, but sometimes it's hard to look inside. And so I really took hold of that, and I apply that every day to my life. The other thing is to try to look at, I I've really complied with all of the board's requirements. I've done the chemical dependency programs, the counseling once a week, the biochemical testing, and I've gone above and beyond the required educational requirements. Since this incident, I've gone back and I've attained my licensed advanced alcohol and drug counselor through the CCAPP in January of 2017. So I've taken some of this to try to turn it into a positive, to be able to be a support and help for other people. I've also tried to look at the silver lining. I didn't always do that. I was kind of the bull in the china shop, and I was pretty straightforward and pretty harsh. And so this process has taught me to take time to step back and look at the silver lining, and I'll give you a situation. And even though this process has been pretty financially difficult for me, I think it has helped me become a better person. An example of the silver lining is I have a house in the Orland area. And I was required to do chemical dependency testing in Paradise. It's about 40 miles from my house. I got to the collection site on the day, it was on a Saturday. I got to the collection site, and the collection site told me that they don't do the collections anymore. So I was in panic. What am I going to do? I started to get frustrated, and then I practiced what I had learned and said, breathe, take a step back. So I called, and they told me it would take them about an hour or an hour and a half for them to figure out what I was going to do. So I went to a coffee shop, and I have some acquaintances in the area. I went through the town, went to a few antique stores and things like that. And then I was told I had to go to Yuba City. So I drove the back road, got to go through some of the country, and did my testing in Yuba City. And then Paradise through the campfire burned 5 days later. And I was fortunate because I probably wouldn't have gone there, even though it's not that far from where I am. I don't go there on a regular basis, and I got to see some things. So even though the fire is devastating, and I'm not saying that, but I had the opportunity that even though I was there, if my site hadn't collected, I wouldn't have probably stayed, I wouldn't have done anything. And so I try to look at that and use those experiences now in a more positive manner, and I probably wouldn't have done that before. I've also, those same meetings that I told you that I didn't like, I really gained a lot of insight. I took the courses, like I told you, I went through and I got my licensed advanced alcohol, drug, and alcohol counselor. And I think that book learning is one thing, but actually attending the meetings and hearing the stories and really understanding that for some people, it is a disease and it's not in their control, and to hear what the triggers are and things like that, and to look at that self-reflection has been very helpful for me. I kind of did natural recovery, which where you just stop on your own. I didn't go to treatment. I didn't do any of those kind of things, and I had already started to change my life before I was court-ordered to do this. I've also tried to apply steps 8 and 9 to make amends to people whenever possible. And it's my amends are not necessarily they were to my family and my husband and those things for this, but also to people that maybe I hadn't been so kind to, or the people that I work with and things like that. And so I now try to apply steps 8 and 9 to make amends and to be more patient and to have more understanding and try to look at things from a new perspective. For my service, I've really focused on the homeless population in my area. There's many people who are homeless, have co-occurring disorders and substance use problems, and so I really work on providing outreach, especially to adolescents in those areas. So I really spent the last 4 years working on self-improvement, and I plan to continue to do that. I've learned some relaxation techniques that I probably hadn't done. I've learned to take care of myself, take time out of my busy day and schedule to take time for me. And I think that those are the things that have changed, and they probably wouldn't have changed had I continued to do that. So, and for those reasons, I'm hoping that you'll consider my petition for earlier termination. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I reviewed your petition, and you state that you do not have a substance abuse. You do not have a substance abuse disorder. Is that correct?
Yes. I had a long discussion with my therapist about this before we came here, and he was like, well, just say you have it, and, that's what they want to hear. The board is like when you're on parole in a prison, and they want to hear that you've been rehabilitated. And I said, yes, but one of the things that I'm working on is integrity. And so for me, I was probably a social drinker, and I absolutely had binge drank in the past. And when I was in high school, I obviously drove drunk. I mean, those were things then, and then I kind of got a career, did things. And But under the terms of the assessment of I've been in social situations. I'm stopped drinking on my own. I've been in social situations, and I'm not tempted. I don't have a desire to drink. I stopped on my own. I've been to conferences where there's social settings. I've had people at my house. I've been to other people's houses, and even though it's there, I believe that, alcohol is part of society, and I have to choose to live in it, and so I need to control me. I don't need other people to walk on eggshells around me. The choices are mine, and so, and I have chosen to stop, and I don't meet the criteria for a substance use disorder, and I know that I needed improvement for more self-care, and I wasn't using alcohol as a crutch or those kind of things, and I've learned some self-help care techniques.
Okay, so just quickly, prior to your DUI, what was your normal drinking habits?
Prior to my DUI, probably maybe every other week or so, going out with friends after work on a Friday, a couple of beers, or going to somebody's house and having some wine. So it was pretty casual, a couple times a month probably.
Okay. And if this petition is granted, do you plan on drinking again, or are you done drinking forever?
I would like to say I'm done drinking forever. I don't plan on drinking. I know the negative consequences of those things. So I don't plan on drinking in the future. And I've gone 4 years, and it's not something that I miss. So.
Okay. And with as far as therapy is concerned, do you plan on continuing to go to therapy?
I would plan to continue to go to therapy, but not once a week. I think that I would go monthly, and if I needed to go more, I definitely would, but I've talked to my therapist about kind of maintaining a check-in basis for a minimum of like once a month, and see if we can go from there, but probably once a month.
You've mentioned self-care quite a bit today, but you haven't really explained what that is for you. Can you explain what your self-care is?
Self-care is a lot of things for me. One, getting the proper amount of sleep. Like I said, I was pretty driven, so I used to go where I'd only have 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. Now I try to get 7 or 8 hours. I try to eat regularly. I'm not a big breakfast fan, and I didn't eat healthy, and I'd eat at like midnight. So I've tried to change my eating habits, drink water, do some walking, take time for relaxation, read a book. Get my nails done, because while you're sitting in the chair, you have like 45 minutes of self-time you can reflect. So, those seem really simple, but those are things that I didn't used to do. So for me, those are some big changes in taking time for myself that I probably didn't do, and I didn't do that before. So.
Okay. And are you still going to, you went to AA meetings, correct?
Yes, and I go 2 times a week. 2 times a week. Right, per the terms of my probation.
Okay. And if probation was to stop, would you stop going to those meetings?
I don't know that I would stop going to them, probably not as regularly. I'm kind of a creature of habit. I'd like to explore SMART. I'd like to look at SMART recovery. It's a different type of recovery, only because I'd like to be able to get more information about it that I think would be helpful possibly for me and also people that I'd be working with. But I like the big book study, and so I would probably continue to go a couple times a month to those situations, yes.
Okay. And why do you want your petition, why do you want your probation, why do you want release from early probation?
The number one reason is financial. I do this as a part-time. My LEP is a part-time, and that's not an excuse, so I'm not saying that. But and the income that I take in from this, and it would have been very easy at this time to give up my license when this incident happened, and I really pondered about doing that. But I decided I got my license for a reason. I want to maintain it, and so I was prepared, and I'm prepared to go the 5 years if I need to. But it's very costly. I make about $2,500 to $3,500 a year from my LEP, and it's cost me almost $20,000 in the last 2 years to comply with the weekly counseling, the testing, the monitoring fees, all of those kind of things. So it's very costly in comparison, and but I can manage. We've managed. I bought a farm in the interim, and if I can struggle through a farm and buying a farm and through the drought, and I've had a lot of consequences that have come in those 4 years that, and I didn't go back to drinking. So, but number one would be financial, and then number two is that part of it's not the problem checking in every day. I haven't missed a day. That's not a problem. It's the testing sites. Sometimes you go and it takes 2 hours to test or 2.5 hours to test. They're not convenient. My family likes to go in the summer. We have a place up in Northern California that doesn't have cell service. They still exist. And so I can't go. So I haven't gone in 2 years on vacation with my to that particular site because I can't go because I can't check in. And if I do, the closest site is like 90 miles away. So I would just like to be able to get back some of the routines. But I made the mistake, and I absolutely will take full responsibility for whatever I need to do because I'm determined to maintain my license.
No further questions.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the board members, and I'm going to start on the left side.
Thank you for coming in. I guess I need a little bit of clarity. So you don't meet the criteria you asserted for having a substance abuse problem, and yet you're talking about not going back to drinking once you're off probation, whenever that happens. Can you talk
Sure.
about why?
I kind of did a pros and a cons thing about what did drinking do for me? Why was I drinking? What did I gain from it? And so weight, I fit in socially. That was on the pro side. The cons are weight, other kinds of things. And so it was something that, as I reflected back about why I was doing it, I decided that it's something that, I don't need in my life. I've never done drugs. I don't smoke. And so I did a pros and cons kind of thing to determine what was I gaining from it. And when reflecting back, it wasn't, besides the social aspect, and I can get the social aspect and be in social situations and not drink. So I think that I maybe was using it as a crutch to fit in, but there are other ways to fit in without that. And so when I did kind of a pros and cons analysis, I decided that it's not something, and I kind of looked at it for a variety of reasons.
Okay. Looking at your testimony and things that you wrote in your in the file, you're very good at control and structure and pursuing of a goal. So I believe you when you say that. And I also wonder about, just in terms of psychological health, you're beginning the process of self-care. I don't know, is there any learning to let go a little bit, loosen up a bit?
Absolutely. Buying a farm, you have no control over anything. We bought a 25 bear farm, and we planted 23 acres in trees. And so you can't control the weather, you can't control the rain, you can't control when the crew comes, you can't control. So you have to control the money when you have to pay for it all. But other than that, so that's been very taxing for me, but also very helpful in learning to let go and that things don't have to be perfect. And so I'd say, and that coincided, that farm purchase was we bought it in the December of 2014. So, and we started it, I think we moved in January of 2015. So it was coinciding right after this incident. And so I think that really has given me some grounding in being able to look at things. And so I think that's helped.
Yeah, so would it be accurate to say that maybe part of drinking too much when you did drink, albeit not too frequently, was being able to let loose and let go, and now you're able to unwind in those other ways that you talked about?
I would say probably.
Yeah.
I would probably, if you would ask me that 4 years ago, I would have said no. But looking at that, absolutely. just take the edge off. And so I think that, and there's other ways to do that now. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Just some clarification.
Sure.
So, so your DUI happened after your wine tasting with
Mhm.
friends.
Mhm.
So I am wondering now, for the social aspect of it, what do you do? I guess you don't go wine tasting anymore, so are you
I actually have.
foregoing-
I'm the designated driver. So you can
Ah,
still go and you can still participate. I mean, I have gone, I've drank sparkling water or grape juice, whatever the facility, different facilities serve different things, but I've gone. And I've made sure that now I'm the driver because I want everybody to be safe and I don't want somebody to make the same mistakes that I made. So I've taken on that role, and like I said, I've been to conferences. While I've been on probation, I have family in Ireland, and I've been there twice, and I've come back, and I didn't drink, and that's the drinking. If I can go to Ireland for a lot of days and not drink, I think I can pretty much take on a lot of stuff. So those were some examples of things that. So I've tried to take on a more mature role in that situation.
I wonder though, what were your friends' response, when you got in a DUI and kind of like you guys have it, create that situations together, and you were the one who got the DUI, but they did not. So, what were their response and how do you, handle the friendship now?
Their response was that it could have been them, and that it's been an eye-opener because all of us drank that day and all of us went in our separate cars and did separate things. And they could have very well had the same situation that I had, and it could have been worse. So we like I said, and I have friends who don't drink. I mean, I have sober, non-drinking friends, and so I have support with my husband, my parents, my family. I have outside friends that are support. But like I said, unfortunately, society has put alcohol. When you go to the grocery stores, there you go, wherever, and so. I'm one that you need to deal with and figure out what those things are and try to make the best of what you have.
Thank you.
All right, closing statement?
No, thank you.
All right, any closing statements at all?
No, I'll just thank you all for your time. I know it's been a taxing day, but thank you for your consideration. I truly appreciate it.
Okay, and sorry about that. Okay, and so again, just to remind you, the board will be meeting in closed session to consider your petition, and then there will be some time for drafting the actual decision, and at some point thereafter you'll get the decision. So with that, the matter is submitted and the record is closed. And if you wait a second, I'll get you a copy of the court reporter form.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are you driving?
Okay, so the board is going to go to closed session as soon as we've had a chance to get the documents and everything's. And we'll reconvene tomorrow at 8:30. Thank you.